Hey everybody, welcome back to the Audi C7 Owner's Garage. I'm Cameron. Today we are going to be installing a product from 3DCadwurx. A guy named James owns this company and he makes some really cool things for B8S4s, and I reached out to him and I was like, hey, I got an idea for a C7 product. So what we've got here is a tire pressure monitoring system and a USB-C fast charger that's going to replace our OEM TouchPad. So if you want to learn how to put this in your car, stick around and I'll show you. Let's talk about a couple quick things before we jump into the DIY. One, you're deleting the OEM touchpad. For us pre-facelift guys, that's not a big deal. I don't know anybody who actually uses it other than just mess around with the car. Post-facelift guys that have wireless Android Auto or CarPlay, the OEM option enabled, I think you have to use the touchpad to navigate those menus, so this might not be worth it because we will be getting rid of it. Second, I'm installing the fast charging system as well as the tire pressure monitor, so it's a USB-C port and a display for tire pressure monitoring. They have other options from CadWurx, 3DCadwurx. There's one that might just be, I think, maybe dual plugs for the USB fast charging, or maybe just a single with battery voltage monitoring, so you can see your live battery voltage, make sure it's all healthy. So check out their website, links in the description below. Pick what works best for you, but I'm going to go ahead and jump on this. First step is removing the center console for your MMI stuff, so we're going to go ahead and knock that out. The first thing we need to do is get the actual console out of the car, obviously. I've shown how to do this when I did my shift knob video, but it's pretty simple, to be honest. You just want to pull up on the front here, get that started. And then what I like to do is I like to just take the leather boot and pull it on the inside a little bit to release it from the console itself and get this loosened up. We're going to do that on both sides. That way we don't have to actually remove the shift knob at all. So from here, you just start pulling up all the way around. That was interesting. So we'll get all that done. Now we have that loose. Now you can't just yank this off because you have quite a few things connected here and you need to undo all of those connections underneath. So you've got a connection for your parking brake button, your start stop button, and your volume knob. So you just want to try and maneuver it around the best you can, find the tabs, and remove all of these from the center console. There are actually 4. Okay, so that just took a couple minutes. We've got this out. We're going to take this over to the workbench and get it ready to install the USB charger and the TPS monitor. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is talk about disassembling this. And I know it can seem kind of daunting, but it's not that terrible. We're going to flip this over. Make sure you have a towel down or something to protect the face of your console. You need a T8 Torx bit. And you have a total, I think, of about 12 screws to remove, but initially we just have 8. We have 4 holding on this module here, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we've got 4 holding on this outer kind of plastic frame here. And if we look at those, there's gonna be 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove those. All right, collect all these screws, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe all of the screws you're removing are all the same exact size, so you don't need to worry about mixing them up. They're all the same length, and they're all T8s. Okay, now that we have all the screws out, we can remove this little module here. Be careful when you lift it up slowly. You do have a wiring harness connected here. Luckily, you got plenty of room to kind of get a hold of it, and we're just gonna slowly wiggle it back and forth and pry it out. So it was on there a little tight, but you just had to wiggle it really gently back and forth. You don't want to get super crazy with it because these are really tiny little pins there. We don't want to damage any of those, and we don't want to damage any of the wires. So take this, put it somewhere safe as well. Okay, so once you have all those screws off and you've gotten those out of the way, there's 4 more right here on the inside, and you can kind of see them, I think, there. There's 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I got the slide on it, hopefully you can see them. We need to remove those. I think those are the last 4 screws we need to remove, and then we can pull this off. So I'm gonna go and get those out. And once again, those are also the same size as all the other screws, so you don't need to worry about mixing those up. All right, now that we have those 4 screws out, it's time to remove this. And there's a bunch of tabs around the outside of it. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I've already started to pry these off a little bit, but then there's a couple hidden ones. There's one right here on the inside between your starter button and the frame of it, and then there's another one that's right here, and it's super tight in between this little plastic piece and this. You gotta pop those off. So just start working them off all the way around and start on one side, kind of lift up, and it should release fairly simply, or easy, however you wanna say it. Let me get this one off here. All right, now don't go yanking up on it either, because you need to feed this line through so it doesn't get caught and damaged. We really don't want to damage anything on that wiring harness. So we have that off. We can set that off to the side now. Okay, I lied earlier when I told you there was no more screws to remove. There are. We've got this module here. This is your TouchPad module that we're removing. So we need to remove 4 more screws here. And those are, once again, all the same size as the other ones we have removed so far. Oop, there it goes. So we'll set those somewhere safe. I'm going to put this back in here so that you can see how it sat. Okay, this is your touchpad sensor, right? This is the actual touchpad. We just pulled it out. You cannot just pull the wires out of here. We're going to have to separate the module from this cover, this kind of opaque cover here. Once again, that tiny little screw, there's 4 tabs, 1, 2, 3, 4. Just real gently, we're going to just kind of pry it up a little bit on each side. And that's going to let us separate this cover completely, and just be super careful here. We're not taking anything out of here, and I'm not planning on reusing it. There is these little foam blocks. You can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, one stuck in here. Those kind of fall out. That's no big deal. But we're going to move those out of the way, just put them back in here. But we need to remove this wiring harness here. It just has a little tab that you press on the outside and it releases. And then now we can put this back together inside of the module and store it somewhere safe. All right, here's the box from 3DCadwurx. This is everything for the project we're doing. We got the USB-C fast charger and the tire pressure monitoring system. You can get it just with the USB fast charger. I think there's an option that if you get it just with the fast charger, also have a voltage monitor, but this has everything. So the first thing that's in here that I'm gonna point out is this template. This is a little 3D printed template, and you're gonna need this because we're gonna have to cut a section of this plastic out right here, and this template lets us know exactly where to cut. So you're going to need a Dremel or some other kind of fine cutting tool to be able to remove this piece of plastic. Another thing we're going to have to remove, we'll show in a little bit, there are these ribs here on the inside of the housing. You can see we're going to have to Dremel out a few of those as well, but we'll get to that. So in here are going to be the directions for any of the products you're using. So here's my TPMS system directions. I'm going to set that off to the side. Some warnings. Make sure you read all this stuff because this is going to show you how to turn on and use everything correctly. Another thing about the TPMS system and the C7 installation tips. So make sure you read through all that. And then we'll open this up. So these valve stems here, these are what you're going to replace your OEM valve stems with, but you don't want to do it yet. You need to get everything turned on first, but these are what's going to actually send a signal to the TPMS system to let you know what your tire pressures are. So we're going to keep these over here safe and sound out of the way. We got some tools. We have our wire connectors for the harness. And then inside this, we should have our actual 3DCadwurx kit. Okay, so let's go over some of the wires in the back. This right here is not a wire that you have to splice anything. The blue wire is the antenna for the TPMS system. So if you didn't get the TPMS system, you won't have that. And then coming off, we've got our positive and ground connection, and this has a mid connector, and that's what's going to connect to this, and then that is what we're going to connect to our positive and negative, or our ground and power supply, and it kind of sources it with some of the actual quick connect taps, the wire taps here. So that's really nice that he does that. You don't have to buy those. You just got to figure out where we're going to attach it to. But in any case, here is the complete and total package here. This is what's going to go into the car. So there's our TPMS system, and then there's our fast charger. This is how it's going to come from him. It looks like this kind of carbon fiber cover, or kind of carbon fiber look, but it's just his 3D printed material here. I think it looks nice and it complements the car pretty well. So we're going to go ahead and move stuff around. I'll show you how we're going to install this. All All right, we're back at our console. This is going to go in as if it was the module. We're just gonna set it in here and align the holes correctly. It only goes in one way. We wanna kind of just gently press it in here, and be careful with this, with the screws out. This thing can move around, so don't press on it, and be careful of all that stuff there. We don't damage any of that. We're gonna get that stuff set in, and then we're gonna take 4 screws and get it secured in. So you guys don't need to see me screwing things in, so I'm just gonna skip to the next part. Okay, so we got that in. If you're using an electric bic driver, make sure you go really slow and don't over tighten these and crack anything. Might just want to use a hand tool, but gently flip this over, don't let anything fall, and just check the fitment here. Make sure that looks nice and flush and clean, and it looks really nice in there. I think it complements the console very well. And now we're gonna flip this over and set it off to the side, because now it's time to address this. We need this piece here, set it up, get the template to where template is facing you here. You'll see it's got this little corner cutout that goes here. And get something, Sharpie, whatever you want, to mark this box here, okay? So I'm gonna try and use this black Sharpie, which I know, black on black, that makes a lot of sense, right? But I can see it pretty easily. I got a silver marker if I wanna touch it up. But use a cutoff wheel, Dremel, something, go in here and cut that out. Shouldn't be very difficult with the right tool. Even if you have like a wood burner, you can literally melt the plastic out if you want to. And then once we're done with that, we're gonna have to go in, and these kind of support ridges that are right here, we're gonna have to go and bring these support ridges back down and get rid of those. So I'm gonna take this over to the Dremel. I'm gonna knock this out real quick and I'll be right back. Okay, so I've got my square cut out. That took about 3 minutes with a Dremel. I used a wheel and a little circular like cutter thing, and knocked out all of those supports on the inside there, cut out the center there, and so this is ready for reassembly. All right, so once again, when we go and put this back together, we need to be careful with everything. This wire here, remember, we're not using this one. If it will just sit there, you wanna make sure wherever that goes, nothing's pressing on this, because you don't want this to damage any of the board there. But what we need to do is feed all of these wires through. And then we also need to make sure we feed this wire back through this little slot here. And then once again, tuck this wire out of the way. I'm kind of tucking it right there next to the TPMS module. And then we're gonna do a quick look, make sure everything fits well here. And we're gonna slowly press this back in. There are some things that help line up all the tabs, but get all those tabs back in, press it all down. It's gonna be looser than it was the first time you started messing with it. So just be careful. Make sure everything's fully seated down. Go back over, press all your tabs back onto themselves. And this has been put back together. Now we're just going to reinstall. Oh, actually, before we reinstall that, we got to put these 4 screws in. So I'm going to put those in. These 1, 2, 3, 4. Stand by. Voila, magic. Those 4 screws are in. We're going to put our module back in, and just be, once again, really careful as you put this wiring harness back on these pins. Line them up. Make sure nothing is pushed in a way that bends any of these pins. Take your time here, guys. Don't break this. Go slow. Try not to push on the wires. Push on the connector. And then when this goes this way, pretty easy to line that all back up. And now we just need to put in the 4 screws for this and the 4 screws for the actual plastic carrier piece here. And then we're done with the assembly on the unit, and it'll be time to put it back into the car. All right, so everything is screwed back in on the back. Everything looks good. We've got our setup here with the USB-C fast charger and the TPMS module. The one thing that I'm not sure about, and I am the first person installing one of these on a C7, since we disconnected the touchpad wire and we didn't do anything with it, it's just kind of hanging out back there. There's a chance that the car is going to throw a fault code for missing that touchpad. I doubt it'll be anything like a check engine light. At most, I think it might be a display on the MMI. Whenever you start the car, it says, you know, something's wrong with the touchscreen. But I think that's it. And hopefully, if that does happen, I can go in with OBD11 and just disable it. I'm not sure, but either way, if that happens, it's not a big deal to me. So I'm going to go research on the car and figure out where we need to attach our power supply. I'm going to try and do it to a switch power. We don't want it on constant power because I don't need this running 24/7. So I'm going to go figure that out. I'll show you guys what I do. I'm out in the car now, and what we have to do is find a place for our power and our ground. Okay, so we're working with the extension here that they supplied for my setup. If you don't have the TPMS and the fast charger, you won't get this piece. It'll just have wires coming off of there. So yeah, they included some quick splice connectors, but I'm going to use the ones that I have. And I know a lot of people don't like these, but these should work just fine for this application. It's in an area that shouldn't be bouncing around like crazy. But if you have a C7 and you've never opened this up before, the one thing you'll notice going in here is there's no good place for ground. You have some metal screws and whatnot, but it all connects to plastic. So we need to find wires, but the cigarette lighter is not contained up front like it is on the B8s. It's actually contained back here in your center console right here. So I did some searching, and what I found were these wires here, and I noticed that these go to the back of the center console, which I was like, okay, something has to go to the back towards the cigarette lighter. So I assume that's what this was. And if I pull on these, I can see here that it pulls the cigarette lighter. So I know that's the wires that go to the cigarette lighter. And I've had this whole console off before, and I know that those go to that wire because I've actually had to disconnect it before. This gray wire, I believe, goes all the way back to your rear vent control stuff. It's no issue there. So I had to determine whether this was power and ground. And so that's connected to this plug here that you can just kind of pull out, get you some more space. And I turned the car on, and I got a tester on here, and there's 6 volts coming from the power, and this is indeed a ground. So I'm going to connect my quick connectors. I'm going to put one on each and get everything connected up with the extension harness here. And there's multiple ways to do this. And for everyone doing this, please verify your car on your own. Do not take my word that these will work for your car. We all know Volkswagen Audi can be really weird about electrical stuff. So verify whatever you're tapping into is correct, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and get this going, and I'll show you what it looks like once I get all this stuff connected. All right, so we have these tapped in, and on the connector here, you've got a solid red wire, you've got a red and black. The red and black is your ground, the solid red is obviously your power. I have those connected via those splice connectors in there. Those go over, and they only connect one way to the plug-in from the actual CadWurx module. So for my setup, got those in there. So we're gonna turn this around, and I've got those kind of semi-hooked up. We're gonna take a look and see if this works. Get it to where you guys can see it. And there we go, we got power. We also have music. So yeah, so you can see it on there. There's my camera. Okay, so we can see we got power. It's looking for the actual modules for the TPMS sensors. So I got to get those installed. So I'm going to wrap up all this. We're going to reinstall the console just like we took it out. It just goes back in reverse order. Press it in there. Make sure none of the wires get pinched. Once I get all that done, I will show you guys how to connect the TPMS sensors to the actual module here. Let's go over the rest of the equipment in the package. These are your actual sensors for the TPMS system if you've got this option. So you've got 4 of them, and if you look, they're all marked. Left front, LF, left rear, LR, right front, RF, right rear, RR. So traditionally on a vehicle, the driver's side is the left side because you're supposed to look at it as if you're sitting in the vehicle. So just imagine yourself sitting in the vehicle, looking to the left. The driver's side is the left side of the car. That is for North American cars. So we're gonna put them on that way. If we end up being wrong, we can always swap them. So that's how you're gonna set these up. You've got a spanner wrench with some securing nuts there to keep these on there. And then you've got this piece of paper from CadWurx, and it tells you a lot of information. Make sure you read all of this. It comes with a default configuration, so it's already defaulted to PSI for the unit of pressure. It's got a high pressure alert set at 44 PSI. There's a low pressure alert set at 29 PSI and a tire temperature alert of 149 degrees Fahrenheit. So you can adjust all of those things with these sensors via the TPMS module in there. Just make sure you read the entire user manual on how to use it. It tells you how to do all those things. So you can also see that it's got some stuff written up there above. These are some tips and tricks on installing these and how to do configurations. Talks about the battery that are actually in the sensors. Read all that stuff thoroughly, but I'm gonna move this stuff to the car and we're gonna start to get these installed and hopefully get them connected to the module. Installation of these is very simple. So first we're gonna take off our normal valve stem cap. After that, we're gonna take one of these locking nuts and it threads onto your valve stem. And just send it all the way back without unthreading. Then you're gonna take the actual sensor and screw it on, and you're gonna hear a hiss because it's gonna depress that inner pin for the air pressure. That's obviously how it gets its reading. So let me get that on there. So get that on there and tighten it up pretty good. Don't over tighten it. Once it's there, use the spanner wrench. Well, first use your finger in the back and tighten that locking nut all the way back to the front there, and then use this to just snug it up. It doesn't need to be crazy. And that's it. Now, I highly suggest you store your valve stem caps and that spanner wrench in a little baggie and throw that in your glove box. That way, if something ever happens with the sensors or you just need these, you'll have them on hand and you don't have to mess with it. So yeah, put those in a safe place. I'm gonna keep mine in the car. All right, so something to be aware of that I read in the user manual that I want to make sure you understand. When you first get this turned on, it might give you zeros all the way across the sensor readout, or it might give you some numbers, who knows. But what it did say is that it's going to take about 1 minute to update your tire pressure monitoring system pressures. Mine came up and only had one value, the rest read 0, and it sounded an alarm. It has a little mini speaker on it to let you know when it gets below your thresholds for high and low pressures. But you just got to drive it for about a minute and they auto-populate. It did say that once you turn the module off and cut power to it, when you turn it back on again, so the next time you drive, the stored pressures from the last time you drove are going to be displayed. It'll automatically update them once you start driving again. But right now, we're going to go ahead and test and see how accurate it is. All right, so we're going to go to my left front one here. Now, lost a little bit of air there, but no big deal. The sensor read that this one was at 39 PSI. So let's see here. Now, this is a Harbor Freight tool, but that's pretty darn close. This says about 38. Now, I could have lost a little bit. You know what we're gonna do? We're gonna back that up a little bit. We're gonna try that again, just to make sure I'm getting fully on there. All right. So yeah, this says almost actually right at 39. I lost a little bit when I took this off, so it seems like it's very accurate. So pretty happy with that. So that's another good reason to keep that spanner wrench in your car. As you saw there when I just did that, when the nut was all the way up, I couldn't get that pressure tester all the way on there. I had to back it up a little bit to get all the way on there. That might also apply to when you're trying to fill your tires with air. So keep that spanner wrench in there. You're probably gonna have to move that whenever you decide to add or you know, mess with your tires at all. All right, so wrapping this video up, my overall thoughts. The install on this is not very difficult at all. You have to have the right tools. You know, the biggest issue there is cutting the piece of plastic, which is honestly really easy, but it might seem intimidating messing with the wires, things like that, but this entire install took me total 25 minutes maybe. It was super easy. Everything fit really well. Shout out to 3DCadwurx for making an awesome product there. Everything works inside. The charging function of the USB fast charger works. Really like that. The only downside to this system that I have that I can see are the size of these sensors. They are huge. Luckily, I've got black wheels, so they blend in really well, but they are pretty big, a little bit bigger than I expected. I don't know if maybe one day we'll get an updated version that's maybe a little bit smaller, but you know, it has to hold a battery and a transmitter in there, so I understand. But you know, when you back up, it doesn't really stand out from the rest of the car. So I'm gonna wrap this up. If you guys have questions, leave them in the comments below. There'll be a link to this product in the description of the video below. Check out 3DCadwurx. He makes a lot of stuff for Audi cars, and he's a really, really nice guy. He's been super patient with me trying to get this video out because I've been kicking the can down the road with my engine swap. So I'm happy to get this one out to you. I'll see you guys on the next DIY video.